Hello everyone, welcome to tonight's story. Your likes and subscriptions can give me hope to create better stories. And let me know what changes you'd like me to make to my voice. Alright, now let's get to tonight's story. Chapter 1. The Golden Throne of Alexandria. Close your eyes and let your breathing slow and steady, as we drift back through time, back through the centuries, to a place where golden sunlight dances on marble columns, and the scent of jasmine fills the warm evening air. It is ancient Egypt, and we are floating gently down the great river Nile, watching as the sun sets behind magnificent temples and towering pyramids that have stood for thousands of years. The water laps softly against our boat, a rhythmic sound that echoes through time, lapping, carrying us deeper into history. In the great city of Alexandria, where the famous lighthouse once stood as one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, there lived a young woman whose name would echo through history for over 2,000 years. Her name was Cleopatra, but not the Cleopatra you might think you know. Take a deep breath and let yourself sink into this peaceful moment. Because here's our first amazing fact about Queen Cleopatra. She was actually Cleopatra the 7th. 6 other queens before her had carried this beautiful name, each one ruling Egypt with wisdom and grace. Like pearls on a string of time, these 7 queens connected Egypt's glorious past to its legendary future. Our Cleopatra, Cleopatra the 7th, was born in the year 69 before the Common Era, when the world was a very different place. As you breathe slowly and deeply, imagine being transported to that time. A time when scrolls replaced books, when candles lit the night, and when the greatest library in the world stood in Alexandria, holding all the knowledge of humanity. But here's something that might surprise you as you drift into relaxation. Cleopatra was not actually Egyptian by blood. Feel your shoulders relaxing as we discover this fascinating truth together. She was descended from one of Alexander the Great's generals, a man named Ptolemy, who had founded a dynasty that ruled Egypt for 300 years. The Ptolemies were actually Greek, and they had maintained their Greek heritage throughout all those centuries. Let your breathing deepen as we explore this gentle mystery. For 300 years, the Ptolemy family had ruled Egypt, but they had always spoken Greek in their palaces and followed Greek customs. They were like beautiful flowers that had been planted in Egyptian soil, but still bloomed in their original colours. Cleopatra, however, was different. Feel your body sinking deeper into comfort as we discover her remarkable gift. She was the first Ptolemy ruler in 300 years to learn the Egyptian language. Can you imagine? While her ancestors had ruled this great land for centuries, speaking only Greek, Cleopatra took the time to learn the words, the songs, the stories of her Egyptian subjects. But her linguistic gifts didn't stop there. Let your mind drift peacefully as we marvel at her incredible abilities. Cleopatra could speak not just Greek and Egyptian, but also Hebrew, Arabic, Ethiopian, and the language of the troglodytes. Some historians believe she could speak as many as 9 different languages. Picture her as a young princess sitting in the great library of Alexandria, surrounded by scrolls and tablets, learning the beautiful sounds and words of different peoples from across the known world. This gift for languages made her something very special, a bridge between worlds. As you feel yourself growing more relaxed, imagine how this ability transformed her from just another foreign ruler into someone who could speak directly to the hearts of her people. When she addressed Egyptian farmers, she could do so in their own tongue. When she met with Hebrew scholars, she could discuss their texts in Hebrew. When ambassadors came from distant lands, she could greet them in their native languages. Feel the gentle rhythm of the Nile carrying us deeper into Cleopatra's world. The palace walls are painted with beautiful hieroglyphics that tell stories of gods and goddesses, of pharaohs and queens who ruled when the world was young. Golden torches flicker in bronze sconces, casting dancing shadows that seem to whisper ancient secrets. Let your breathing slow even more as we discover another wonderful truth about our remarkable queen. When Cleopatra became pharaoh at just 18 years old, Egypt was facing many challenges. The Roman Empire was growing stronger, and other kingdoms were looking at Egypt's great wealth with envious eyes. But Cleopatra had something that wealth alone could not buy. She had intelligence, wisdom, and a deep understanding of how to bring people together. Breathe deeply and imagine the great palace of Alexandria. Its walls were decorated with the most beautiful art from around the ancient world. There were gardens filled with exotic plants and flowers, fountains that sang with falling water, and courtyards where scholars and philosophers would gather to discuss the mysteries of the universe. This was Cleopatra's home, and it was here that she began to display the remarkable qualities that would make her one of history's most fascinating leaders. Here's another amazing fact that might surprise you as you sink deeper into peaceful relaxation. Cleopatra was not just a queen, but also a brilliant scholar. The great Library of Alexandria, which held more books and scrolls than any other place in the world, was like her second home. She would spend hours there, reading works of philosophy, mathematics, medicine, and poetry. Feel yourself drifting as we explore her incredible mind. Cleopatra studied the works of ancient philosophers, learning about ethics, logic, and the art of reasoning. She read medical texts and became knowledgeable about herbs and healing. She studied mathematics and astronomy, understanding the movements of the stars and planets that guided navigation and predicted the flooding of the Nile. But perhaps, most remarkably, she wrote her own works too. Ancient historians tell us that Cleopatra authored books on cosmetics, medicine, and weights and measures. Imagine this young queen, surrounded by scrolls and inkwells, carefully writing down her knowledge so that future generations could benefit from her wisdom. Unfortunately, these writings have been lost to time, but their existence shows us that Cleopatra was not just a ruler, but a contributor to human knowledge. As you breathe slowly and deeply, picture Cleopatra in her private study. The room is lit by oil lamps that cast a warm, golden glow. She sits at a wooden desk, her dark hair adorned with a simple gold circlet, as she reads from a scroll about the healing properties of plants. Her fingers trace the ancient words and her mind absorbs the knowledge like fertile soil absorbing gentle rain. Evening breeze comes through the window, carrying with it the scent of the gardens below. Roses and jasmine, mint and lavender. Outside, the great city of Alexandria settles into peaceful sleep, its streets growing quiet as the merchants close their shops and families gather for their evening meals. Let this peaceful scene fill your mind as your body grows more and more relaxed. Cleopatra represents something beautiful about the pursuit of knowledge. In a world where many rulers relied only on force or fear, she chose to rule through understanding, wisdom, and the power of connection with her people. Feel yourself floating gently on the warm waters of the Nile as we continue our peaceful journey through time. The stars above are beginning to appear. Those same stars that guided ancient sailors and told stories to shepherds watching their flocks by night. Here's a fact that will fill you with wonder as you drift towards sleep. Cleopatra's Egypt was incredibly wealthy, not just because of gold and precious stones, but because of something much more practical and valuable: grain. Egypt was known as the breadbasket of the ancient world. The rich, dark soil left behind by the Nile's annual floods could grow enough wheat and barley to feed not just Egypt, but much of the Mediterranean world. Breathe slowly and deeply as we picture the endless fields of golden grain swaying in the gentle breeze. Each year, when the Nile flooded, it would deposit rich, fertile soil across the farmlands. This miracle happened so regularly that the Egyptians built their entire calendar around it. They knew that after the flood came the planting season, then the growing season, then the harvest. Cleopatra understood that this agricultural wealth was Egypt's greatest strength. As your body sinks deeper into relaxation, imagine her traveling through her kingdom, visiting farms and granaries, talking with farmers about their crops, and listening to their concerns. She knew that a queen who took care of her land and her people would have a kingdom that could weather any storm. But here's something even more amazing. Cleopatra didn't just manage Egypt's wealth, she expanded it. Let your breathing grow even slower as we discover her remarkable business sense. She established trade routes that reached all the way to India and beyond, bringing spices, silks, and precious stones to Alexandria's busy markets. Picture the harbour of Alexandria in your mind's eye. Ships from all over the known world come and go like gentle waves on a shore. There are vessels from Greece carrying olive oil and wine, ships from Arabia loaded with frankincense and myrrh, boats from India heavy with spices and jewels. The air is filled with the sounds of different languages and the exotic scents of distant lands. Cleopatra would often walk through these markets herself, dressed simply so she could move among her people without being recognized. She would listen to the merchants discussing prices, observe which goods were most in demand, and understand how trade was affecting the daily lives of ordinary Egyptians. Feel your mind growing peaceful and calm as we discover another wonderful aspect of her character. Cleopatra was known for her fairness in business dealings. She created laws that protected merchants from fraud and established standard weights and measures so that everyone could trade with confidence. She understood that prosperity shared is prosperity multiplied. The Queen also invested heavily in Egypt's infrastructure. Let yourself drift deeper into relaxation as we imagine the great engineering projects she supported. New canals were dug to bring fresh water to distant farms. Roads were built and maintained to help merchants transport their goods safely. The famous lighthouse of Alexandria was kept in perfect repair, its beacon guiding ships safely to harbour day and night. As the night deepens and our gentle journey continues, feel yourself becoming more and more peaceful. The moon has risen over the Nile, casting silver light on the water and turning the desert sands to shimmering pools of starlight. Here's a remarkable fact that shows Cleopatra's wisdom and foresight. She understood that Egypt's future depended not just on wealth, but on knowledge and innovation. Under her rule, the great library and museum of Alexandria flourished like never before. She invited scholars, scientists, mathematicians, and philosophers from all over the world to come and study in Egypt. Breathe deeply and let yourself imagine this incredible center of learning. The library contained over 400,000 scrolls, more books than most people could read in several lifetimes. There were works on every subject imaginable: medicine, astronomy, mathematics, history, poetry, philosophy, and engineering. Scholars would come from Greece, Rome, Persia, and India to study these precious texts and to share their own knowledge. Cleopatra herself would often visit the museum, discussing new discoveries with the scholars and supporting their research. Feel your body growing more relaxed as we picture her walking through the halls of learning, her presence inspiring others to reach for greater understanding and wisdom. The museum was like a great garden where ideas could bloom and grow. There were rooms for studying the stars, laboratories for mixing medicines, workshops for building mechanical devices, and quiet chambers where philosophers could contemplate the great questions of existence. Let your breathing slow even more as we discover how Cleopatra supported these scholars. She provided them with generous funding, comfortable living quarters, and access to all the resources they needed. She understood that investment in knowledge was an investment in the future of humanity. Under her patronage, amazing discoveries were made. Astronomers created more accurate maps of the heavens. Mathematicians developed new ways of calculating and measuring. Doctors learned better methods of healing. Engineers designed improved systems for irrigation and construction. As you sink deeper into peaceful sleep, remember this beautiful truth about Cleopatra. She saw herself not just as a ruler of Egypt, but as a guardian of human knowledge and wisdom. She believed that learning and understanding were treasures more valuable than gold or silver, and she devoted much of her reign to ensuring that these treasures would be preserved and shared with the world. Feel the gentle rhythm of the Nile carrying you deeper into rest. The first chapter of our journey is coming to a peaceful close, like the sun setting behind the ancient temples of Egypt. Tomorrow, our journey will continue as we discover more amazing facts about this remarkable queen who bridged worlds and built bridges of understanding between different peoples and cultures. Let your breathing become slower and slower, deeper and deeper, as you drift on the peaceful waters of history, surrounded by the gentle wisdom of ages past and the promise of dreams to come. Chapter 2. The Language of Love and Diplomacy. The gentle morning light filters through your peaceful dreams as we continue our serene journey down the Nile. The water is calm and mirror-like, reflecting the golden rays of dawn as they touch the ancient stones of temples and monuments that have stood for thousands of years. Breathe slowly and deeply as we drift into our second day of discovery. Today we explore one of the most fascinating aspects of Cleopatra's remarkable life, her incredible ability to connect with people through the power of language, culture, and genuine understanding. As you feel your body settling into deeper relaxation, let your mind wander to a magnificent scene. It is a warm afternoon in Alexandria, and Queen Cleopatra is preparing to meet with important visitors from Rome. But this is not the nervous preparation of someone who fears these powerful foreigners. Instead, it is the calm, confident preparation of someone who understands that true strength comes not from intimidation, but from intelligence, wisdom, and the ability to find common ground. Here's an amazing fact that will surprise you as you sink into peaceful contemplation. When Julius Caesar first came to Egypt, he expected to meet a typical monarch, someone who would either bow down in fear or challenge him with military might. Instead, he encountered something far more powerful and unexpected. A queen who could match his intellect, engage with his ideas, and discuss philosophy, politics, and strategy as an equal. Feel the gentle rhythm of your breathing as we imagine this historic first meeting. Cleopatra had arranged to be smuggled into Caesar's presence, wrapped in a carpet, not because she was hiding in fear, but because she wanted to make a dramatic entrance that would capture his attention and show her creativity and courage. When the carpet was unrolled, there she was, confident, intelligent, and ready to engage in the kind of sophisticated conversation that Caesar rarely experienced with other rulers. Let your shoulders relax completely as we discover what made this meeting so special. Cleopatra didn't try to impress Caesar with gold or jewels or displays of military power. Instead, she impressed him with her mind. She could discuss Roman poetry in Latin, debate Greek philosophy in Greek, and analyze military strategy with the sharp insight of someone who had studied the great generals of history. But perhaps most remarkably, she could make Caesar laugh. Breathe deeply and let this gentle truth wash over you. Humor, wit, and the ability to find joy even in serious situations were among Cleopatra's greatest gifts. Ancient historians tell us that she had a wonderful sense of timing, a quick wit, and the ability to find the perfect words to lighten a tense moment or deepen a serious conversation. As you drift deeper into relaxation, picture them walking together through the gardens of the palace. The evening air is filled with the scent of blooming flowers, and fountains sing their gentle songs. They talk about books they've read, places they've traveled, ideas they find fascinating. This is not the meeting of conqueror and conquered, but the beginning of a friendship between two remarkable minds. Caesar was known throughout the Roman world for his intelligence and education. He was a skilled writer, a brilliant military strategist, and a sophisticated politician. Yet here was Cleopatra, matching him thought for thought, idea for idea, making him see the world through new eyes. Feel the peaceful waters of the Nile, carrying you deeper into this beautiful story. The sun climbs higher in the clear blue sky, and the gentle breeze carries with it the sounds of a great civilization at its height. Merchants calling their wares, children laughing as they play, the soft splash of oars as fishermen cast their nets. Here's another wonderful fact about Cleopatra that will fill you with admiration as you relax more and more deeply. She understood that true diplomacy was about much more than formal treaties and political agreements. It was about creating genuine connections between people, finding ways to bridge differences, and building relationships based on mutual respect and understanding. Let your breathing slow even more as we explore this remarkable aspect of her character. When Cleopatra later met Mark Antony, another powerful Roman leader, she didn't simply invite him to a standard royal banquet. Instead, she created an experience so memorable, so filled with beauty and wonder, that it became one of the most famous events in ancient history. Picture this amazing scene in your mind's eye. Cleopatra had a magnificent barge built, covered in gold and purple silk. The sails were made of the finest materials, and the silver oars kept time to the music of flutes and harps. She dressed as Aphrodite, the goddess of love and beauty, and sailed down the river to meet Antony, who was waiting on the shore. But here's what made this truly special. It wasn't just a display of wealth or power. Feel yourself sinking into peaceful contemplation as we discover the deeper meaning. Cleopatra had learned about Roman culture and mythology. She knew that Romans revered the goddess Aphrodite, whom they called Venus, and she understood that by presenting herself in this way, she was speaking to Antony in a language he would understand and appreciate. The barge itself was like a floating work of art. There were flowers everywhere, roses and jasmine and lilies, filling the air with the most beautiful fragrances. The sound of gentle music drifted across the water, and the whole scene was like something from a dream or a poem. As you breathe slowly and deeply, imagine yourself there. The water laps softly against the golden hull of the barge. The music creates a peaceful rhythm that matches the beating of your heart. The flowers release their sweet perfumes into the warm air, and everything is suffused with beauty and tranquility. But the most remarkable thing about this famous meeting wasn't the spectacle. It was what happened next. Let your body relax completely as we discover the real magic. When Cleopatra and Antony began to talk, they discovered that they shared many interests and passions. Both loved literature and theatre. Both were fascinated by philosophy and history. Both had travelled widely and experienced many different cultures. Cleopatra had read Roman poets and could quote them from memory. She understood Roman customs and traditions. She could discuss Roman military tactics and political strategies. But she also introduced Antony to Egyptian culture, sharing with him the ancient wisdom of her people, the beauty of Egyptian art and architecture, and the sophisticated understanding of science and mathematics that had developed along the Nile over thousands of years. Feel the gentle afternoon breeze as our peaceful journey continues. The sun is now high overhead, warming your skin and creating patterns of light and shadow that dance across the water. Your breathing has become slow and natural, like the eternal rhythm of the great river itself. Here's a fascinating truth about Cleopatra that reveals her incredible emotional intelligence. She understood that different people respond to different approaches, and she had an remarkable ability to adapt her style to bring out the best in everyone she met. Let your mind drift into peaceful contemplation as we explore this gift. With Caesar, who was intellectual and enjoyed serious discussion, Cleopatra engaged in deep conversations about philosophy, politics, and strategy. She showed him the great library and introduced him to Egyptian scholars and scientists. Their relationship was built on mutual respect for learning and wisdom. With Antony, who was more passionate and emotional, she created experiences that appealed to his love of beauty, celebration, and grand gestures. She organized magnificent festivals, theatrical performances, and banquets that were like elaborate works of art. But even these celebrations had deeper meaning. They were ways of sharing culture, building understanding, and creating lasting memories. Breathe deeply and let yourself imagine one of these incredible banquets. The Great Hall is lit by hundreds of oil lamps that cast a warm golden glow. Tables are laden with delicacies from across the known world. Dates stuffed with almonds, roasted peacock served with exotic spices, wines from the finest vineyards of Greece and Egypt. Musicians play gentle melodies on harps and flutes, and the air is perfumed with frankincense and myrrh. But the real beauty of these gatherings wasn't the luxury, it was the conversation. Feel yourself growing more relaxed as we picture Cleopatra moving gracefully among her guests. She speaks with a Syrian merchant about the spice routes to the east, discussing how different flavors and aromas can transport people to distant lands. She listens to a Greek philosopher explain his theories about the nature of happiness, asking thoughtful questions that show her genuine interest in his ideas. Here's another amazing fact about Cleopatra's social skills. She had an incredible memory for personal details. Ancient sources tell us that she could remember the names and interests of hundreds of people, from important foreign ambassadors to local farmers and craftspeople. When she met someone again, even after months or years, she would ask about their family, their work, their concerns, showing that she truly cared about them as individuals. This gift for personal connection extended to her own people as well. Let your breathing grow even slower as we discover how she related to ordinary Egyptians. Cleopatra would often walk through the markets and streets of Alexandria, talking with merchants, artisans and farmers. She would ask about their businesses, their families, their hopes and concerns. She remembered what people told her and would follow up on their situations when she saw them again. The people loved her for this genuine interest in their lives. She wasn't just a distant figure on a throne, but someone who understood their daily struggles and celebrations. When a merchant's daughter was getting married, Cleopatra might send a small gift. When a farmer was struggling with a failed harvest, she would arrange for assistance. When an artisan created something particularly beautiful, she would make sure it was recognized and celebrated. As the day grows more peaceful and your journey into relaxation deepens, feel the gentle evening breeze beginning to stir. The sun is moving lower in the sky, painting the water with streaks of gold and amber. Birds call softly from the reeds along the riverbank, and the world seems to be settling into a state of perfect tranquility. Here's one more wonderful truth about Cleopatra's gift for communication. She understood that actions often speak louder than words, and she had a remarkable talent for symbolic gestures that conveyed deep meaning. Breathe slowly and deeply as we explore this beautiful aspect of her character. When she wanted to show respect for Egyptian religious traditions, she would participate in ancient ceremonies, dressing in traditional garments and following customs that had been observed for thousands of years. This wasn't just political theatre, it was a genuine expression of her connection to Egyptian culture and her role as pharaoh. When she wanted to honor foreign visitors, she would learn about their customs and traditions, incorporating elements of their culture into official ceremonies. A delegation from Persia might be greeted with Persian music and customs. Visitors from Nubia would find foods and decorations that reflected their homeland. This attention to cultural details showed that she saw other peoples not as foreigners to be tolerated, but as valuable contributors to the rich tapestry of human civilization. Let your body sink deeper into peaceful relaxation. Cleopatra moves among her guests like a graceful diplomat, speaking to each person in their own language, asking about their homeland, sharing observations about how different cultures have contributed to human understanding. She might discuss astronomy with a scholar from Babylon, medicine with a physician from India, or poetry with a bard from Gaul. As you feel yourself growing more and more peaceful, remember this beautiful truth about Cleopatra. She believed that understanding between peoples was one of the highest goals a leader could pursue. She saw her role not just as ruler of Egypt, but as a bridge between East and West, between ancient traditions and new ideas, between different ways of seeing and understanding the world. The evening stars are beginning to appear as our second chapter draws to a close. Feel yourself floating gently on the peaceful waters of the Nile, surrounded by the wisdom and beauty of ages past. Tomorrow, we will continue our journey, discovering more amazing facts about this remarkable queen who showed the world that true power comes not from force or fear, but from intelligence, understanding, and the ability to bring out the best in everyone around you. Let your breathing become slower and slower, deeper and deeper, as you drift into the gentle embrace of peaceful sleep, carried by the eternal rhythm of the great river and the timeless wisdom of one of history's most fascinating leaders. Chapter 3: The Scholar Queen and Her Treasures of Wisdom. Soft morning light filters through the mists of time as we continue our peaceful journey through ancient Egypt. The Nile flows gently beneath our vessel, carrying us deeper into the remarkable world of Queen Cleopatra. Feel your breathing slow and deepen as the gentle current guides us toward new discoveries about this extraordinary ruler. The air is filled with the sweet scent of lotus blossoms and the distant sound of temple bells calling worshippers to their morning prayers. As you settle into perfect relaxation, let your mind drift toward the magnificent city of Alexandria, where one of the most incredible treasures of the ancient world awaited our scholar queen. Here's an amazing fact that will fill you with wonder as you sink into peaceful contemplation. The great library of Alexandria, which Cleopatra considered her intellectual home, contained more knowledge than any other place in the ancient world. But it wasn't just a building filled with scrolls. It was a living, breathing center of learning, where the greatest minds of the age came together to push the boundaries of human understanding. Breathe slowly and deeply as we explore this temple of wisdom. Picture yourself walking through its magnificent halls, where sunlight streams through tall windows onto countless shelves lined with papyrus scrolls. The air carries the gentle fragrance of papyrus and ink, mixed with the exotic scents of cedarwood and myrrh, used to preserve the precious texts. Here, scholars from every corner of the known world worked side by side, sharing their knowledge and discoveries. There were mathematicians from Greece, astronomers from Babylon, physicians from India, philosophers from Persia, and engineers from all across the Mediterranean. Each brought their own traditions of learning, their own ways of understanding the world, and their own precious insights to add to humanity's growing treasure of knowledge. Cleopatra understood that this library was more than just Egypt's crown jewel. It was a gift to all humanity. Let ancient sources tell us that she was particularly fascinated by mathematics and science. Feel yourself drifting deeper into tranquility as we imagine her working with the great mathematicians of her time. She would study geometric proofs, examine astronomical calculations, and discuss the latest theories about the nature of the physical world. But here's something truly extraordinary about Cleopatra's approach to learning. She didn't just want to understand these subjects for their own sake. She wanted to apply them to make life better for her people. When she studied astronomy, she was learning how to predict the flooding of the Nile more accurately, which would help farmers know when to plant their crops. When she examined mathematical principles, she was looking for ways to improve Egyptian engineering and architecture. The library also housed incredible collections of medical texts, and Cleopatra studied these with great enthusiasm. Let your breathing grow even slower as we explore this compassionate aspect of her character. She learned about the healing properties of plants and minerals, not just out of curiosity, but because she wanted to ensure that Egyptian physicians had access to the most advanced medical knowledge available. Feel the gentle warmth of the Egyptian sun on your face as our peaceful journey continues. the great river flows steadily onward. Here's another fascinating fact about our scholar queen. Cleopatra was not content to simply read about discoveries made by others. She actively participated in original research and experimentation. Ancient historians tell us that she conducted her own investigations into chemistry and medicine, working alongside the greatest scholars of her age to unlock the secrets of the natural world. Breathe deeply and let your mind wander to her private laboratory. Picture a spacious room filled with gleaming bronze instruments, carefully labelled jars containing minerals and plant extracts, and tables covered with notes and observations written in her own careful script. The windows look out over the harbour of Alexandria, where ships from distant lands bring new specimens and materials for her experiments. Cleopatra approaches each investigation with the patience and precision of a true scientist. She measures carefully, observes closely, and records everything meticulously. When she tests the properties of a new mineral or plant extract, she doesn't rush to conclusions, but conducts multiple experiments to verify her results. Let yourself sink deeper into peaceful relaxation as we discover one of her most remarkable areas of research. Cleopatra was particularly interested in cosmetics and perfumes, but not for the reasons you might expect. She saw these as branches of chemistry and medicine, ways to understand how different substances interact with the human body and how they can be used to promote health and well-being. She experimented with different combinations of oils, essences, and mineral compounds, carefully documenting which mixtures produced the most beneficial effects. Some of her formulations were designed to protect the skin from the harsh desert sun. Others were meant to soothe irritation or promote healing. Still others were created simply to bring joy through beautiful fragrances that could lift the spirit and calm the mind. Here's an amazing detail that shows her scientific rigor. Cleopatra didn't test her cosmetic formulations only on herself. She worked with volunteers from her court and even from among the common people of Alexandria, carefully observing how different preparations affected different types of skin. She kept detailed records of these observations, creating what was essentially one of the world's first systematic studies of dermatology. But her research interests extended far beyond cosmetics. Feel your breathing growing more and more peaceful as we explore her work in other fields. Cleopatra studied metallurgy, learning about the properties of different metals and alloys. This knowledge helped her improve the quality of Egyptian coins and jewelry, but it also contributed to advances in Egyptian tools and weapons. She investigated the properties of various plants and minerals, not just for their medical applications, but also for their potential use in dyes, inks, and preserves. Some of her discoveries improved the techniques used by Egyptian craftspeople to create the beautiful textiles and artworks for which Egypt was famous throughout the ancient world. The afternoon light grows golden and warm as we drift deeper into our journey of discovery. Feel yourself becoming more and more relaxed as we explore another remarkable aspect of Cleopatra's intellectual life. The gentle sounds of the river and the distant calls of birds create a peaceful soundtrack for our exploration of her extraordinary mind. Here's a wonderful fact that demonstrates Cleopatra's vision and wisdom. She understood that knowledge was most valuable when it was shared, and she made extraordinary efforts to ensure that the discoveries made in Alexandria would benefit people throughout her kingdom and beyond. Breathe slowly and deeply as we picture her innovative approach to education. Cleopatra established schools not just in Alexandria, but in cities and towns throughout Egypt. She sent teachers trained in the latest mathematical, scientific, and medical knowledge to work in these schools, ensuring that children from all backgrounds would have access to the best education available. Let your mind drift to one of these schools in a small Egyptian town. The building is simple but comfortable, with windows that let in plenty of natural light for reading and writing. Children from farming families sit alongside the sons and daughters of merchants and craftspeople, all learning together regardless of their social backgrounds. The teacher, trained in Alexandria, shares not just basic reading and arithmetic, but also practical knowledge that will help these young people improve their lives and communities. They learn about the properties of different plants, how to calculate the area of fields for planting, how to predict weather patterns, and how to maintain their health through proper diet and exercise. Cleopatra believed that this kind of practical education would strengthen Egypt by creating citizens who could think clearly, solve problems, and contribute to their community's prosperity. Feel yourself sinking into deeper relaxation as we contemplate this beautiful vision. She saw education not as a luxury for the wealthy, but as a tool for improving life for everyone. But her commitment to sharing knowledge extended beyond formal education. Here's another amazing example of her wisdom and generosity. Cleopatra ordered that copies of important medical and agricultural texts be made and distributed to physicians and farmers throughout Egypt. This was no small undertaking. Each copy had to be painstakingly written by hand on expensive papyrus, but she considered a worthwhile investment in her people's well-being. She also established a system of traveling scholars who would visit different regions of Egypt, sharing the latest discoveries and techniques with local experts. A physician might travel from Alexandria to a distant town to teach local healers about new treatments. An engineer might visit farming communities to share improved techniques for irrigation or construction. These traveling scholars would also bring information back to Alexandria, sharing local knowledge and discoveries that might benefit the wider world. Feel your breathing growing slower and more peaceful as we appreciate this beautiful exchange. A farmer in Upper Egypt might discover a new way to preserve grain, and through Cleopatra's network, this knowledge would eventually reach scholars in Alexandria, who could then share it with visitors from other countries. This flow of information in both directions created something remarkable, a true partnership between the great centers of learning and the practical wisdom of ordinary people. Cleopatra understood that innovation and discovery could come from anywhere, and she created systems to ensure that good ideas would be recognized and shared, regardless of their source. As evening approaches and our peaceful journey nears the end of its third day, feel the gentle twilight settling over the ancient world. The sun hangs low in the sky, like a golden coin, casting long shadows that dance across the water. Your breathing has become slow and natural, matching the eternal rhythm of the great river that has flowed through Egypt for countless millennia. Here's one final, wonderful truth about Cleopatra's dedication to learning and wisdom. She understood that the greatest discoveries often come from bringing together different ways of thinking, different traditions, and different perspectives on the world. Let your mind drift peacefully as we explore this remarkable aspect of her leadership. When Cleopatra invited scholars to Alexandria, she didn't just welcome those who agreed with Egyptian ways of thinking. Instead, she actively sought out people who would challenge existing ideas, ask difficult questions, and propose new approaches to old problems. Picture one of the great symposiums she would organize. The setting is a beautiful garden courtyard in the palace, surrounded by graceful columns and filled with the soft sound of fountains. Scholars from many different traditions gather. There might be a mathematician from Greece presenting a new geometric proof, while a physician from India shares discoveries about the circulation of blood. An astronomer from Babylon describes the movements of the planets, while an Egyptian priest explains how these celestial patterns connect to the flooding of the Nile. A philosopher from Persia discusses the nature of wisdom, while a Roman engineer demonstrates a new technique for construction. Breathe deeply and feel yourself becoming part of this peaceful scene. Cleopatra moves gracefully among these brilliant minds, asking thoughtful questions that help each scholar see their work from new angles. She might ask the mathematician how geometric principles could be applied to architecture, or suggest to the physician how astronomical observations might help predict the best times for certain treatments. What made these gatherings truly special was Cleopatra's gift for finding connections between seemingly unrelated ideas. Feel your body relaxing completely as we appreciate this beautiful talent. She could see how a Persian philosophy of balance might enhance an Egyptian medical treatment, or how a Greek mathematical concept might improve a Roman engineering project. This ability to synthesize different traditions of knowledge made Alexandria under Cleopatra's rule a true crossroads of human understanding. Scholars who came to Egypt didn't just share their own knowledge. They left with new insights gained from exposure to completely different ways of thinking about the world. But perhaps most remarkably, Cleopatra applied this same synthetic approach to her own learning. Let your breathing grow slower and more peaceful as we discover her personal intellectual method. She would study a problem from multiple perspectives, reading Greek texts, Egyptian sources, Persian writings, and Roman analyses. Then she would spend time in quiet contemplation, allowing these different viewpoints to merge in her mind until new understanding emerged. Ancient sources tell us that she kept extensive personal notes, written in several different languages, where she would record insights that came from combining different traditions of knowledge. These notebooks, sadly lost to history, were apparently filled with original observations about medicine, mathematics, astronomy, and philosophy that drew from the wisdom of many cultures. As the stars begin to appear in the darkening sky, our third chapter draws to a peaceful close. Feel yourself floating gently on the eternal waters of the Nile, surrounded by the accumulated wisdom of ages and the inspiring example of a queen who understood that true knowledge comes not from any single tradition, but from the beautiful harmony that emerges when different ways of understanding the world are brought together in the spirit of genuine curiosity and mutual respect. Let your breathing become slower and slower, deeper and deeper, as you drift toward the gentle embrace of sleep, carried by the timeless rhythm of the great river and the eternal quest for understanding that connects all seekers of wisdom across the centuries. Just slower, deeper and deeper. Chapter 4. The Eternal Legacy of the Last Pharaoh. In the deep stillness of the night, as stars wheel overhead in their ancient patterns, we begin our final gentle journey into the world of Queen Cleopatra. Feel yourself floating peacefully on the dark waters of the Nile, surrounded by the soft whisper of reeds and the distant glow of temple fires that have burned continuously for thousands of years. Your breathing has become as slow and steady as the eternal flow of the great river itself. And in this perfect tranquility, we prepare to discover the most amazing truths about how Cleopatra's remarkable life created a legacy that continues to inspire and teach us more than 2,000 years after her time. Here's a beautiful fact that will fill you with wonder as you drift deeper into peaceful sleep. Cleopatra was the last active pharaoh of Egypt, the final ruler in a line of kings and queens that stretched back over 3,000 years. She represented the end of one of the longest continuous civilizations in human history. But rather than simply watching her kingdom fade away, she fought with intelligence, creativity, and unwavering determination to preserve everything that was most precious about her people's heritage. Breathe slowly and deeply as we contemplate this extraordinary responsibility. Imagine being the guardian of 3 millennia of accumulated wisdom, art, architecture, literature, and scientific knowledge. Every decision Cleopatra made was influenced by her deep understanding that she was not just ruling Egypt in her own time. Let your mind drift to the great monuments that surrounded her every day. The pyramids of Giza, already over 2,000 years old when she ruled, stood as silent witnesses to the ingenuity and vision of her predecessors. The temples of Luxor and Karnak, with their massive columns and intricate hieroglyphic inscriptions, preserved the religious and philosophical traditions that had guided Egyptian civilization through countless generations. Cleopatra understood that she was the living embodiment of this incredible heritage. But here's what makes her story truly remarkable. Cleopatra didn't simply try to preserve the past exactly as it had always been. Instead, she found ways to honor ancient traditions while adapting them to the realities of a changing world. This delicate balance between preservation and innovation required extraordinary wisdom and skill. For example, the traditional role of the pharaoh included serving as the high priest or priestess of Egypt's ancient religion. Let your breathing grow even slower as we picture Cleopatra fulfilling this sacred duty. She would participate in ceremonies that followed rituals established thousands of years earlier, wearing robes and jewelry that connected her to countless generations of previous rulers. But she also adapted these ceremonies to include elements that would help her people understand their place in the wider world. When she performed rituals honoring the goddess Isis, she would incorporate symbols and ideas that resonated with Greek and Roman visitors, helping them appreciate the depth and beauty of Egyptian spiritual traditions. This ability to serve as a bridge between worlds was perhaps Cleopatra's greatest gift to history. As you feel yourself becoming more and more peaceful, contemplate this beautiful truth. She showed that it was possible to remain deeply rooted in one's own traditions while still being open to learning from other cultures and adapting to changing circumstances. The night deepens around us as we continue our gentle exploration, and you can feel yourself becoming more relaxed with each breath. The stars above are the same stars that Cleopatra studied in her pursuit of astronomical knowledge, the same celestial lights that guided ancient sailors and inspired poets throughout the ages. Here's an amazing fact about how Cleopatra's influence extended far beyond her own lifetime. The ideas she championed, the methods she developed, and the example she set continued to inspire leaders and thinkers for centuries after her death. Even today, more than 2,000 years later, people around the world still study her life for lessons about leadership, diplomacy, and the power of education. Grieve deeply and let yourself imagine the ripple effects of her remarkable life. The scholars who worked in Alexandria during her reign carried their knowledge and methods to other parts of the ancient world. The diplomatic techniques she pioneered influenced how nations would interact with each other for generations to come. The educational systems she established provided a model that would be adapted and refined by countless societies. But perhaps most importantly, Cleopatra demonstrated something that the world desperately needed to learn: that true strength comes not from military might or material wealth alone, but from the cultivation of intelligence, wisdom, and understanding. Feel your body relaxing completely as we explore this timeless lesson. In her interactions with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony, two of the most powerful men of the ancient world, Cleopatra proved that a leader armed with knowledge, cultural sensitivity, and genuine respect for others could hold their own in any negotiation or discussion. She showed that diplomacy, based on mutual understanding and shared interests, was more durable than agreements based on fear or intimidation. This approach to leadership had profound implications that extended far beyond politics. Let your mind drift peacefully as we consider her influence on education and learning. Cleopatra's belief that knowledge should be shared rather than hoarded helped establish principles that would eventually contribute to the development of universities, libraries, and educational institutions throughout the world. Her practice of bringing together scholars from different traditions and encouraging them to learn from each other provided an early model for the kind of international cooperation in research and education that we value so highly today. The idea that the best solutions often emerge from combining different perspectives and approaches is something that can be traced directly back to the methods she pioneered in Alexandria. Here's another wonderful way that Cleopatra's legacy continues to inspire people. Her example shows us that it's possible to be both deeply rooted in one's own culture and simultaneously open to the world. She never abandoned her identity as an Egyptian pharaoh, but she also embraced the opportunity to learn from Greek philosophy, Roman administration, Persian poetry, and the wisdom traditions of many other peoples. This balance between cultural pride and intellectual curiosity is something that modern societies still struggle to achieve. Feel your breathing growing slower and more peaceful as we appreciate how Cleopatra's example points toward a way of being in the world that honors both diversity and unity. She showed that you can love your own traditions and heritage while still being excited to discover what other cultures have to offer. She demonstrated that learning from others doesn't diminish your own identity, it enriches it. She proved that the most effective leaders are those who can communicate across cultural boundaries while remaining true to their deepest values and beliefs. As our peaceful journey nears its end, feel the gentle current of the Nile carrying you deeper into the embrace of restful sleep. The night is perfectly still now, with only the soft sound of water lapping against the shore and the distant call of a night bird echoing across the river. Here's one of the most beautiful truths about Cleopatra's lasting influence. She understood that the real treasures of any civilization are not its gold or silver, but its ideas, its discoveries, its artistic achievements, and its capacity for wisdom and compassion. Throughout her reign, she worked tirelessly to ensure that these precious elements of human culture would survive and flourish, even if her political kingdom did not. Breathe slowly and deeply as we contemplate this remarkable foresight. While other rulers of her era focused primarily on military conquest and territorial expansion, Cleopatra invested heavily in preserving and transmitting knowledge. She understood that empires rise and fall, but ideas can be immortal. The great library of Alexandria, under her patronage, became not just a repository of existing knowledge, but a living laboratory where new ideas were born. Feel yourself sinking into deeper relaxation as we picture the long-term impact of this vision. Scholars who studied in Alexandria carried their learning to other cities and countries, where they established new centers of learning and research. When Alexandria itself eventually declined, the intellectual traditions that Cleopatra had nurtured found new homes in Constantinople, Baghdad, Cordoba, and eventually in the universities of medieval Europe. The chain of learning remained unbroken, carrying forward the accumulated wisdom of the ancient world into new eras and new civilizations. But Cleopatra's influence on the preservation of knowledge went beyond just maintaining libraries and schools. Here's another amazing aspect of her legacy. She understood the importance of translation and cultural exchange in keeping ideas alive and relevant. During her reign, scholars in Alexandria translated important works from many different languages, making Greek mathematical texts available in Egyptian, Persian poetry accessible in Greek, and Roman historical works readable in Hebrew. Let your breathing grow even more peaceful as we appreciate this beautiful vision. Cleopatra recognized that ideas become stronger and more useful when they can cross cultural boundaries and speak to people in their own languages. This commitment to translation and cultural exchange created a model that would be followed by Islamic scholars during the medieval period, by Renaissance humanists in Europe, and by educators and researchers right up to the present day. The idea that knowledge belongs to all humanity and should be shared as widely as possible is a direct legacy of the principles Cleopatra championed. Here's perhaps the most wonderful aspect of her enduring influence. Cleopatra's story continues to inspire people, especially young women, to pursue education, to develop their talents, and to believe that they can make a positive difference in the world, regardless of the obstacles they may face. Throughout history, women who faced challenges and discrimination have looked to Cleopatra's example for encouragement. They have drawn strength from her intelligence, her determination, and her refusal to be limited by others' expectations. She showed that leadership is not about fitting into predetermined roles, but about developing your unique gifts and using them to serve something greater than yourself. In the deepest stillness of the night, as our gentle journey through time reaches its peaceful conclusion, feel yourself floating in perfect tranquility on the eternal waters of the Nile. Your breathing has become as soft and steady as a gentle breeze, and your body rests in complete comfort as we reflect on the timeless lessons that Queen Cleopatra's remarkable life continues to offer the world. Here's the most beautiful truth of all about this extraordinary woman. Cleopatra showed us that the greatest leaders are those who see themselves not as rulers over others, but as servants of something larger and more enduring than their own personal ambitions. She understood that true immortality comes not from building monuments to oneself, but from contributing to the eternal human quest for knowledge, understanding, and connection. Let your mind drift peacefully as we consider this final, wonderful lesson. Every time Cleopatra chose learning over luxury, diplomacy over warfare, or cultural exchange over isolation, she was making a choice that would echo through the centuries. She was planting seeds of wisdom that would continue to bear fruit long after her physical presence had faded from the world. Today, when we visit museums and see ancient Egyptian artifacts, we are witnessing the continuation of her legacy. When we read about advances in medicine, mathematics, or astronomy that trace their roots back to Alexandria, we are benefiting from her vision. When we celebrate the value of multicultural education and international cooperation, we are following principles that she pioneered. But perhaps most importantly, whenever someone chooses to respond to conflict with understanding rather than anger, to meet challenges with creativity rather than force, or to build bridges between different peoples rather than walls, they are channeling the same spirit that made Cleopatra one of history's most remarkable leaders. Feel yourself sinking deeper and deeper into peaceful rest as we appreciate this beautiful continuity. The Nile still flows through Egypt today, just as it did during Cleopatra's reign over 2,000 years ago. The same stars that guided her studies of astronomy still wheel overhead in their eternal patterns. and the same human capacity for wisdom, compassion, and understanding that she embodied so brilliantly still lives within each of us, waiting to be awakened and expressed. As you drift into the gentle embrace of sleep, carry with you the inspiring example of Queen Cleopatra. Remember her curiosity, her intelligence, her respect for others, and her dedication to preserving and sharing the best of human knowledge and culture. Let her story remind you that every individual has the potential to make a positive difference in the world, that learning and understanding are among life's greatest treasures, and that the bridges we build between different peoples and cultures are among the most lasting and meaningful contributions we can make to the future of humanity. The ancient Egyptians believed that speaking someone's name kept their memory alive in the world. Tonight, as you rest in perfect peace, you carry forward the memory and the inspiring example of Cleopatra, the last pharaoh of Egypt, the scholar queen, the builder of bridges between worlds, and the eternal reminder that true greatness comes from wisdom, compassion, and the generous sharing of our gifts with others. Sleep now in the gentle embrace of history's wisdom. Let your breathing become slower and slower, deeper and deeper, as you drift on the peaceful waters of dreams, surrounded by the timeless beauty of the Nile and the eternal legacy of one of history's most remarkable women. Rest peacefully and dream of ancient wisdom, timeless beauty, and the endless possibility that lives within each human heart. The gentle sound of water lapping against the shore grows softer and softer until all is peaceful silence and perfect rest.